I'll just want to get into a bit of the laundry list of accomplishments of Captain Walsh. So as we all probably already know, just before getting here, Captain Walsh was one of the first people to ever reach the bottom of Marianas Trench, the deepest part of the ocean, which is amazing in itself, but that really only scratches the surface, if you will, of his accomplishments, really. He served for over 24 years in the US Navy, during which he completed the historic mission to Challenger Deep, and also served as research and development of submarine technology. And after that, he moved on to become a professor of ocean engineering at USC in Los Angeles, like he was just mentioning before. And then went on to establish IMI, the International Maritime Incorporated. I'm sure I'll get some corrections on all of this internet research here. But IMI has completed over 100 projects in 20 different countries all around the world. And over the years, Captain Walsh has been part of over 70 expeditions to both the North and the South Pole. And all of this exploration has not gone unnoticed by any means. He's been recognized by President Eisenhower for the trip to Challenger Deep, recognized by Life magazine as one of the greatest explorers of all time, got the highest award of the National Geographic Society, the Hubbard Medal, and was elected as a member of the Ocean Elders, which is a small but influential group of people who speak out for conservation of the ocean. And that has some awesome people in there like Sylvia Earle, James Cameron, a ton of huge names in marine conservation. And he's actually contributed so much to marine technology and ocean exploration that the Marine Technology Society and Society of Underwater Technology have created an award called the Captain Don Walsh Award for Ocean Exploration. So all that is to say, it is an honor to have you with us here today. And you've seen and done some amazing things. And I'm excited to hear about them. And I'm sure we have a ton of questions for you.
Okay, so where do we start?
Yeah, sure. If
what would you like to know about? That there's so many past lives. I'm 89 years old, so anybody watching here in your group thinks this is kind of Superman thing. If you just see lightning and hear thunder long enough, things happen. You get old and a lot of stuff happens. So I wouldn't put too much admiration behind all of my biography. And you did a nice job. Thank you. The long form is about 7 pages long, and I figured, being a student, you wouldn't have time to read any of that crap. So I sent you the 2-pager, and hopefully that gave you a few clues. But it's hard to know where to start.
I guess like a
suggestion. I'll play off of that.
Sure. Yeah. If anybody would like to ask anything, feel free to raise your hand to throw it in chat. But I guess my question would be, did you always want to explore the ocean? Is that something that you felt called to do from a young age, or is that just kind of how your career ended up taking you?
Thank you. That's a good place to start. I grew up in the late 1930s, kind of the height of the Depression, in Berkeley, California. I was born in Berkeley, and we lived in a group house, 3 divorced women and their kids. My mother raised me as a single working mom. My parents got divorced about the middle of the 30s. And we were up in the Berkeley Hills. We had this wonderful large picture window in the living room, and I could look straight across the bay, and there was the Golden Gate. And it was the Golden Gate. And because we didn't have a whole lot of money in those days, I didn't have a lot of toys. And I don't know if anybody here remembers something called or knows what an erector set is, but it was a set of bits of nuts and bolts and bits of metal all punched out. And you could hook them all together and make things. It was kind of a metal precursor to Legos, okay? And so our kids had these. They were very popular during the 1930s. Uh, and I looked across the bay and watched them build the Golden Gate Bridge. So I had a virtual erector set right across the bay from where I was looking, and I watched them build that bridge. And I watched the ships come and go through the Golden Gate, and they'd go over the horizon, disappear, and they'd be coming in. And I wondered where they were going, what they were doing, and what's out there. And guess what? I found out. And I first went to sea in 1951, midshipman cruise, because my initial education was at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. And I had graduated from Alameda High School, San Francisco Bay Area. And so I was a local boy that went back east to get educated. And I suppose one of the great, private moments in your life, we all have them, whether it's you one up somebody, you win something, feel kind of full of yourself, was when I was captain of my own submarine and came in from the Pacific Ocean through the Golden Gate, driving my own ship through that thing that I'd looked at as a little boy, 5 or 6 years old, and wondering what's out there. And now I was captain of my own ship coming out of the Golden Gate, going into San Francisco Bay. But back to your question about exploration, that made me curious about the oceans. And let me, we're using the term exploration, so let me at least give you a definition of what I think is exploration, how you define it. And that is curiosity acted upon. You see something you're curious about. We do that a gazillion times a day. We look at something, say, oh, that's interesting, what's that? We never act on it. When you act on curiosity, whether it's to get a book out or start a research project or whatever, now you're an explorer. Okay, so I always wanted to go to sea. I wanted to be a sailor. I grew up on the San Francisco Bay and watching all those ships, that's what I wanted to do. And so I went into the Navy and spent 24 years in the Navy, and went to see a lot of different kinds of vessels. And I had an opportunity while I was in submarines in San Diego, California, to volunteer for a bathyscaphe Trieste program. And of course, there are only 2 of these things in the world, bathyscaphes. The French Navy had one, and our Navy had one, and that was it. And by the way, word bathyscaphe comes from 2 Greek words, bathy, deep, scaphos, boat. And so I put my hand up. They sent out a radio message to all the submarine officers in our area for a volunteer. Put my hand up and I got selected. And of course, I'm all full of myself. Oh, I won something finally in the Navy, because I wasn't a very good scholar. I was almost dead last in my class at the Naval Academy. I think I was number 711 out of 860. So that's why I never got a nuclear power program. They wouldn't have me. I was officially stupid. So I found out later, well, no, rather quickly, I should say, I was the only volunteer. So I wasn't selected out of this great pot of people because of my intellectual prowess or whatever. I was the only person who put his hand up. So that's how I went to the Trieste program. Now, coming along with our theme of what made me want to explore the oceans, the bathyscaphe only holds 2 people. It only held 2 people. And so it was you as the pilot and your scientists on board. So you were kind of flying wing on that scientist. There's only one viewport the guy could look out. And so you ran all of his equipment, his paper recorders and of those time, tape recorders, recording the conversations, loading the camera and the films. And every dive we made seemed to be with a different scientist. So one week I dived with a biologist, next week with a geologist, and so on. So for the 3.5 years that I was in that program, I worked with a real variety of science. I had to understand what he wanted to do, what he wanted to measure, because when he come to us getting ready for his trip, his dive, I'd have to fit all of his equipment inside the sub and make sure it was safe. It was going to be a hazard to us, and make sure it works. So the fitting out, if you will, of the scientific equipment for the science, I had to understand what he wanted to measure. Why was it important? So on. So in a sense, I had a 3.5 year apprenticeship in oceanography, because I had to know the words, the code words, how they spoke to each other. And as I say, one in biology, geology, and other chemical oceanography, so on. So I thought that was pretty neat. And when I finished that program, I went back to the submarine force for about 2 or 3 years. And I ended up as the executive officer of a submarine. That's your number 2 guy. I was the assistant captain, if you will. And from that point until I actually got my own command, it was going to be about another 3 years. That was the kind of the average tour length. And so I found out that I actually thought to myself, wouldn't it be good to go back to school to become a real oceanographer? So I looked around and I found out that the Navy would permit you to accept a scholarship in a field that was related to the interests of that organization, namely the Navy. Well, certainly knowing about the oceans was important to the Navy. So I shopped around, and Texas A&M gave me a departmental scholarship, because the Navy would not give me, they'd give me the time off, but that was it. I had to pay for everything else. And so Texas A&M Department of Oceanography gave me a scholarship. I went down there. I took my PhD in physical oceanography, and I worked a lot with NASA, Houston, on remote sensing oceanography. That is, what can you measure about the oceans from Earth orbiting platforms? I probably spend as much time in the back of NASA airplanes with sensors looking at the ocean surface as I did on our research ship at A&M. And anyway, at the end of that, I got my doctorate and a master's, and went back to the Navy and had command of my submarine. Then after that, I got put into various jobs relating to research and development related to the oceans, or I mentioned the Secretary of the Navy's office. And my last job in the Navy was I was director of Navy laboratories, all of the Navy laboratories. And then I went to USC as Dean of Marine Programs, Professor of Ocean Engineering. So I guess it was an evolution. How did I get started in ocean exploration? It was an evolution. It began with my being selected for the Trieste, because that's exploration, and then being very interested in what I was doing in way of ocean science, because as a naval officer, I knew how to navigate a ship. I knew how to read charts and a fathometer, but I wasn't too concerned about what was in the ocean or how it worked, as long as we didn't run into things, with shallow water, grounding the ship, something like that. So I knew how to go to sea and operate a ship, but I didn't know much about what the sea was. And now the Trieste program gave me the opportunity to know something about the sea. And I went from there on back to university to formally learn the field and getting my PhD. That's the story of a little boy watching San Francisco Bay and the ships come and go, became a very old man living in Dora, Oregon.